gay men getting to a place like San Francisco or New York where they feel kind of like, okay, I'm safe now. I'm in this like world that accepts me. I can do this thing I want. And they're in this ecology of lots of and kind of parties and just kind of having like arrived, but like it doesn't take away like the emotional experience of having gotten to here and like what it took to get here. And then they get in relationships and they don't know how to like bridge back into intimacy.
Hello, everyone. I am Michelle Melville Cashan. I'm the Community and Content Director here at Sexual Health Alliance. And today I'm with Finn Deerhart. Finn, will you introduce yourself for us?
Yes, well, I am Finn Deerhart, as you said, and I am a certified sexuality counselor. I work mostly with queer men, and I'm not sure what all you want me to introduce, but I'll allow you to cue me.
Yeah, tell us just a
Yeah.
little bit about yourself, maybe a little bit about your background.
Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, so my background, I grew up I'll just kind of give you a high level view. I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian church. My father's a minister. I was a minister as well. And so I was in the closet and that set me up in this way where I lived a double life. And, once I came out of the closet, I got really interested in sexuality because at that point I was able to start exploring and didn't notice the results of shame in my own body and life until I started getting in romantic relationships. And I was just like, confused by, well, in hookups that wasn't a problem, but in relationships I could not. It was very difficult. So I got very interested in it. That became my entry point, and started my pathway in this work now, which I can expound on later.
Yeah, definitely. Well, tell us a little bit about the work you're doing now.
Okay, yeah. So I do a wide range of work. I do a lot of counseling work these days. I did for a while do quite a range of work, where like retreat facilitation. I've studied with some tantra practitioners and some embodied sexuality work. And at that point, I just mostly focused on counseling work. And occasionally I will do some facilitating at retreats. And it kind of like ranges, or kind of like spirituality focused retreats or embodied sexuality retreats. But it's kind of a range. Do men's circles sometimes too.
Yeah, amazing. So you are going to be one of the presenters at our online event happening in June with Dr. Joe Kort, and your topic is intentional sexuality. So can you tell us, how do you define intentional sexuality?
Right? Yeah, it's such an arrogant presupposition. No, it's a thing which is interesting, right? Because sexuality is so driven by the unconscious. But anyway, there's a way that I think I learned a lot in these embodied sexuality with different practitioners and via tantra to be very curious and have like inquiry about one's sexual process and to turn a almost like a very like I'm going to do this on purpose, kind of to study myself as an approach to help people find more meaning in their lives, more understanding of some of the dynamics that they're working through in their bodies and in their relationship histories, versus kind of the like, oh, I'm turned on, I want it, kind of just go do it thing, which I'm not shaming that, but to kind of really help, but like I said, queer men is who I mostly work with, to resolve some of the tensions around like I'm having this that I think I want, but I feel empty. I don't know what I want, and kind of chasing after experiences and not really understanding maybe some of the emotional dynamics that they really want to know and experience of themselves. So that
Yeah.
this work that I'm presenting is kind of an overview of that and kind of an organized way of thinking about different pursuits for sexuality. And there have been studies that show, I think like there's one study that I saw somewhere that was like 273 reasons people have sex. Like
Love
that's
it.
if not more, but like kind of like organizing those into some like categories like sensuality needs, needs for kind of like freeing ourselves from like an ego bind, needs for encountering like gender fluidity, needs for, and these could be like parsed out into many different like specific desires or motivations, but that's kind of a high view of what I'll be speaking about, and all in the service of trying to create like this question of like, can my sexuality be a personal growth like generator or something that can be a pathway? Kind of using some of the language of some of the like, I don't use tantric language just for its philosophical kind of like, and what I think is outdated, but in that spirit of can be my path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so interesting. I think we're going to learn so much from you. So, my next question for you: what are some of the most common shame based narratives that you help your clients unlearn?
That's a tricky one. Actually, I love that question. I think it's tricky because the narrative is after one has kind of come to an understanding of the represented material. Like, what is it that I'm feeling? But I find that like the shame-based narratives at the body level are like inhibitions. Like, what's kind of how do I know that I'm experiencing shame? Right? Like the physical experiences that are pointing to something. But then they come back to these pathogenic beliefs that we have as little kids, stuff left over from families of origin and like culture and just the matrix of all of that. And I think it shows up so differently for everybody. I think it like the most like outward manifest level, if someone were to like say it, it could be like, I don't feel like I'm good enough, or I feel like my body's not this. But that kind of is the target of all those energies that people are feeling, and they might like hate a body part of themselves or something. But that's kind of like it's too it doesn't really like give, I don't think, air and space to all the different things that are going on under the surface that might be like targeted at that one way that they're thinking about it. I don't know if
Yeah.
that answers your question, but it's kind of a wide range. So I can start at the body.
Oh, yeah.
What's your body telling you? Like, where are you feeling that? And like, what does that feel like? And trying to get an insight to when they start to notice that they leave presence, you know, and it's like, oh yeah, I did feel like I was kind of like, I use somatic language too, like kind
Yeah.
of pulling up and in, or kind of like moving to the left, or, you know, just something that gives them like a way to track in the body, like something's going on, and just slow down and investigate that. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah. Yeah,
pausing.
because I think there can be so many shame-based narratives, that could fall into many different categories. Like you don't like who you are, you don't like the way your body looks because you've been told you're supposed to have a six pack and be built, and if you don't look like that, then you feel bad about yourself. So sometimes it can be kind of hard to unravel where to start.
Totally. And those are so approximate, right? Because it's like, oh, I don't like my penis, or I don't like my body. Or it's like, well, is that like a way that you're trying to work through some sort of agency-based experience or lack of? Or is that a way that you're trying to surmount like some sort of like wound that you're carrying? Is that like, there's so many different versions under the surface of that. And they kind of like fall in this like really broad, general categories, you know, like, I don't like my body. I'm like, okay, well, or I'm never like, I'm not allowed to feel good, or you know, like some belief that like it's very specific to somebody, although they're universal too.
Right, right. And that kind of brings me to my next question. So you have a really interesting background, like with being a minister and growing up in the church. So how have your personal experiences shaped the way you teach other people about healing and about sexuality?
I love that question. You know, I think for me, having been a minister, it's like I tried to like, after I came out of the closet, like I don't want to be like that. I don't like the church, and I just kind of like had a lot of like anger that I had to work through for a long
Yeah,
time. And then come back around to this, like, well, I've been raised in it. It's kind of what I do. I'm a minister from Texas. And
yeah,
it kind of informs, I guess, my ethos or how I approach. I'm very compassionate based work, and think of it as like a ministry in a way that's like, you know, we're not given any kind of help in sexuality. And I think, you know, the teaching and education is abysmal. And also just like the way that sexuality brings us into contact with what like we're trying to repress in ourselves anyway as just a human species, like all the different like perversity, you know, of sex. So
yeah,
like I don't know, it's a very spiritual question. You know, it's like central to like the spiritual dilemmas of all cultures. So you can't like not look at it spiritually, even if you don't think of it as like something that is like religious. But it's not, I don't use religion. I want to be clear. I'm
yeah,
not thinking of this in a religious way. When I say spiritual, I mean like inquiry, meaning, purpose, connection. Like, I love that actual definition is I think Dan Siegel is like, what is spirituality? Having
yeah.
self-inquiry, seeking meaning, purpose, connection with other people, and actively working at that. So
Yeah. Do you find you get a lot of clients like who come to you with like similar experiences? Like maybe they grew up in the church or have like some religious trauma and things like that?
totally. Yeah, and I wonder sometimes if that's a good question too, because for me, is I wonder, is that because of like how I just like putting myself out there and so I'm kind of attracting
Yeah.
similar, you know, conversations. But I do. A lot of people will read my website, or they've seen articles that I've written, or they've heard me on podcasts, and so they're like, "Oh, I grew up in a church like that, or I've had that," you know, and so that comes at me. And I think even if one didn't grow up in that, like specifically in their family, like our cultural values are heavily inflected by these values anyway. So we just can't get away from it. And then even now in the current times, like a lot of my clients currently are carrying the weight of what's happening in our country under the the religious kind of shift or whatever. But it's like so present. It's just like I hear all the time. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because even if you didn't grow up in like a religious household or community, like you're getting it from the government now, and it's coming down on you in a lot of different ways. And I could see where that would really affect people.
100%. Yeah, and vicariously in ways where, this whole like nobody is safe kind of thing. Like, oh, so well, it's not me. It's not that that's happening to the trans people. It's like, and trying to like show people like that's not actually true. There's a slippery slope, and that is kind of the spiritual point I think in sexuality now is like for me and the people I'm working with. Like, if you're queer and you really love being queer, like in the gay community, like that I work with is like celebrating like if you love it so much, like instead of being like you should be involved, it's more like can that galvanize a fire in you to fight for these marginalized people's rights who are very much need us right now, that kind of approach, which is this very spiritual, I think. Right, so it's like I can't get away from being a preacher.
Right. You can't get away from it.
I feel like I'm preaching at this woman right now.
No, there's a lot of crossover there though with skills. So, I mean, I can see where it works.
Mm.
Okay, so here's my next question. So this is actually something that I found on your website, where you talked about like cultural scars. So how do cultural scars around masculinity and show up in gay relationships, and how can partners begin to work through them together?
I think in gay relationships, you get like two men, and so there's like double the thing, like double
Oh, yeah.
the forces that have like shaped men's lives, psyches, bodies, and behavioral extensions of all that. And so you have also these norms. I think it's interesting in gay relationships where it's like masculine norms kind of inverted sometimes. Like in the gay community, it's like, you know, tops being privileged, or, and even just anal penetration being like a privileged act or some sort of like superseding act, that what is the word? It's like, oh, if you're a side, you're not really having sex. Or I mean, there's this kind of like myth around that kind of stuff. Or yeah, tops privilege. Or even in like men who like to be penetrated, there's like this kind of like I can take it, which is really just like masculine standards kind of inverted on themselves. And so that kind of stuff shows up a lot. The gender roles and relationships that we've all taken in, and what it means to make more or less money, or like how to divide like home chores and care,
Yeah.
the work and labor of care, and the relationship, that kind of stuff, it kind of gets fraught. And I'll say this and I'll pause. I see a lot of, this could be just like the people who come to me. Like, I don't know if it's a wide thing, but like gay men getting to a place like San Francisco or New York where they feel kind of like, okay, I'm safe now. I'm in this like world that accepts me. I can do this thing I want. And they're in this ecology of lots of and kind of parties and just kind of having like arrived, but like it doesn't take away like the emotional experience of having gotten to here and like what it took to get here. And then they get in relationships and they don't know how to like bridge back into intimacy a lot. I am generalizing, but I see it so much because it's like, well, that requires you to get back into the vulnerability that you've like built an identity against and have like a sexual, a sports sex practice, which great, that is fun. But that is not also a way for most people to like go back to these like places that intimacy requires, like being revealed and like taking those guards down. And sports is definitely not the same thing as like being witnessed like intimately, So it's kind of anyway,
Yeah. And when you're
generalizing, but these are themes. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And when you were talking about like the household chores and things like that, like I'm sure a lot of your work, isn't very sexy. Like it's like, talking about basic things that you talk about with all couples, like how to divide household labor and responsibilities and things like that too.
Totally. Yeah. Or like, are they seeing or feeling like, residue of like their mothers and the relationship with their families, and like that like seeing like having this residue of like their mothers, and how that like disturbs their self-perception too in the relationship. know, these like tropes about which one of you is the man, which one of you
Oh,
is the
right,
woman.
right.
And it's like, I'm not going to be that one. I'm the, it happens a lot. And in heterosexual relationships, there's like this easy quote unquote projection scheme that happens just based on our culture. But in gay relationships, it gets all kind of confused. And that's not true of all of them. Some of them like really love queering the relationship across all these different
Yeah.
like spaces. But I do see a lot of men who are like trying in their own gay way to be a man's man, you know?
Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I mean, relationship dynamics are really complicated, no matter how you spin it.
Totally. The more I learn about my own relationship, it's like, oh man, all along I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, because it changes depending on the person and your circumstances and the times, things were different back in like the 60s and 70s and things are different now. It's more encouraged to have like an equal division of like household labor and like, mental labor and all of that too.
Totally. And like year to year in one's own life too. It's like what was true for me then was is not true for me now and what needs to yield and change. And the relationship is this entity, or there's sex life. I mean, this is kind of a good
Yeah.
for me is in this questioning, like, why is this intentionality thing really cool? In sex is because it encourages people to provide a space where they're actively like digging into the vulnerable edge of whatever it is in their growth process and themselves and as a couple and to have space to play with that and embody that is separate from their just typical default sex life.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, if they're like just exclusive or not, or some range in the middle where they're kind of, it doesn't matter. It's like, can you make a space where you show up to these conversations and you go intentionally toward the places where you feel like, ooh, I don't want to go there. And I think that helps them evolve, but they have to have a degree already of stability. And I think that's something to note about the people I work with that you've asked. I don't deal with a lot of couples in like crisis or conflict. And, I do deal with conflict and I enjoy that. I think that's necessary for fun, passionate sex, but I don't work and support a lot of like high conflict or on the last leg relationships because that's just not my work. And I don't know if that intentional type work work there would just like blow it up.
Yeah. And so I was going to ask you too, do you have like a favorite like issue to treat or like favorite thing to talk about with your clients?
I love that question. I feel like I'm not supposed to have a favorite, right? Like
I like everything.
yeah, no, I really love working with couples. And I do love it when I see like a well-worn kind of historical kind of problem in the relationship become like it just can evaporate in spaces where they're like, oh my God, when they have a willingness and they're aligned with each other, and then they see like, oh my God, I've been like wrong about you for so long, and then the vulnerability of that coming up. So I would say my favorite thing actually is watching men get vulnerable. That's why I love retreats because watching them go through a process and get like the mask off is I love it.
Yeah. So I can't remember if I saw this on your website or not, but do you currently run retreats or is it something that you've done in the past?
I used to do a lot of them, and
Mhm.
now I do like every once in a while. Just because
Yeah.
I'm focusing more on writing. But yeah, I used to do a lot of retreats and really enjoy that space, but it's a lot of energy and time. And
Yeah.
that's really the reason why I haven't been doing it, is I'm writing a lot and needing to focus on that. And that retreat thing is its own kind of like hustle and forethought. And
Of course. For sure. Like we do our big annual conference every year, and it's a lot of energy, worth it and so much fun, just a lot of, energy put into it.
totally. Yeah, I mean, I just got back actually in April. I taught in New York with Kort. I'm not sure if you've heard of Kort work. He's amazing.
Oh,
He's a somatic educator, works with back to the body, works with all bodies, all genders. He is a pro dom, and we did a retreat in New York that was like a kind of a merger of BDSM and tantric principles, and it was so cool. I love that was great, but it's all
oh,
for this year.
sounds awesome. It was all volunteer, you said?
It's all for this year. Like no
Oh,
more.
for this
Yeah,
year.
yeah. No more retreats this year. That was like 4 months of.
Yes. And you said you're writing. So what are you writing?
Well, I have a Substack that I write about sex, politics, a lot of like it's kind of all over the place, but it's more my space to where I kind of like process a lot and like share and have like some accountability with my readership about social justice work and stuff that I'm going through in my own process. And then I also have a memoir that I'm working on because I just love creative writing, and that's just all for just like the creative process.
Oh, very cool. Well, keep us updated on things and we can share them in our newsletter with our audience.
Yeah, I would actually love that. You know, honestly, I'm trying to grow my Substack actively and really loving that process. So I'm totally happy to share that.
Yeah, yeah, we'd love that. So, our audience is therapists, educators, counselors, coaches, medical professionals. So, what do you think is important for sexuality professionals to know when helping gay men work through relationship issues?
Yeah, I would say, and too, there's like kind of the assumption of familiarity, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I think I can speak for a gay man, and that's such a trap because it's like sometimes like, yeah, I'm on point with some of the assumptions and that familiarity, and then sometimes it's like, no, you are so wrong, and you cannot assume that because he's a gay man or whatever, you know. But I would say, um, that vulnerability is really there's like a perform vulnerability that happens with gay men a lot that gets like coded as vulnerable, but it's kind of like more of a like a performance, and that deep vulnerability is really, really hard because the gay man, has been like just covered up and had to perform so much inside of this like masculine paradigm in which he doesn't really fit, but he like tries to pass.
Yeah.
And so to watch for that performance, and that like I mean like culture kind of celebrates like in some ways some aspects of gayness now in the
Mhm.
mainstream, but I think there's a lot of performance around it versus like a true deeply like a comfort being witnessed and revealed, and that takes a lot of work for anybody. I think I tell gay men often, like this is my personal bias, but I say like, you want help with this, you should totally hang out with women and non-binary people because like they're already having to work through openly these like aspects that they don't get the privilege of, quote unquote, and of the cultural kind of like passing, you know, especially like
Right.
white men, you know, and then like so there's a lot of wisdom in teaching there outside of the gay community if you can just get them away from their gay friends. they're like they're like little that's my bias, but I do encourage it. Like go learn from other people. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That is such a great takeaway. Go learn from other people. I think that our audience will find that really valuable.
Mm.
All right, everyone. If you want to hear more from Finn Deerhart, please attend our online event. It's called Smart Love and Pride of Sides with Dr. Joe Kort, happening this June, Saturday, June 21st, and Sunday, June 22nd, 2025. It's an online event, very accessible. And like I said, anyone is welcome to join. Coaches, educators, medical professionals. If you're just a nerd and you love learning about really cool topics, come join us. We'll have the link in the description below so you can learn more. And thank you for being with us today, Finn.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, bye everyone. Thanks for watching our video. Do us a favor, share this with someone who might benefit from this information. Your support helps us reach more people with important sexual health information. If you are passionate about this space, we know you'll enjoy these videos. So check them out, subscribe to our channel, give this video a thumbs up, and remember, you are exceptional.